Kadri, help me understand what you believe is going to happen next now, because the Russians say these talks this week have led to a dead end. And just in the past 24 hours, we've heard from Poland's foreign minister who says Europe is now on the cusp of war. How serious is the situation as it stands?
Well, it is serious, and everyone is, of course, nervous about what might happen next. That said, let's see about the fate of these talks. I somehow do not believe we have heard the last word here yet. And when I was following statements from Moscow yesterday, they sounded like there is no point to continue without new input from the West. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister urged the Western side, the American side, also to draft some documents that they could discuss. So it wasn't a final no. That said, of course, everything on Russian side will depend on what President Vladimir Putin thinks, and I'm not sure we know yet.
So what do you think President Putin's intentions are? As I mentioned, the Russians say these talks have hit a dead end. There's no more talks scheduled to take place. How do you see a pathway forward, and what will Putin do next?
Well, I think Putin's actual end with all of this is to gain some control, firm control over Ukraine's future policymaking, and to make sure that Ukraine never joins NATO. And I think he will now weigh his options as to whether it is better for him to try to continue that push diplomatically, whether he thinks that something can be achieved vis-a-vis the United States first and foremost, key interlocutor for Moscow in security matters, and the rest of the West. Or would it make sense to go to war? I'm not among people who think that Russia will launch an all-out land attack against Ukraine in the style of Second World War. I just don't think that Russian society can take it. That would be hugely popular. And even though Russia's authoritarian style of government, they need to be conscious of public opinion still. But of course, more limited military action cannot be excluded.
It's fascinating when you look at the perspective from the Russians here, still threatening that invasion, but perhaps the talk won't match the action. Kadri, also wanted to get your reaction to an interview that we've just conducted with the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, who says Ukraine is indeed ready to join that NATO alliance. Do you think that will happen? And if so, what would be the consequences for Russia?
I don't think it will happen anytime soon. I think everyone in the current NATO members are perfectly aware that this is a very sensitive issue for Russia and indeed an issue for which Russia is prepared to go to war. And I do not think anyone wants to risk that. So, yeah, sad as it is for Ukraine, I'm afraid that NATO door for them is not open at the moment. And something would need to change in strategic environment to make that feasible. That said, the West would, of course, try to offer all other kinds of help to Ukrainians and counter Russia as best as they can. Economic sanctions, I think, will be the tool of choice.